Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Like Books. Today, I have a special video where I have my friends Alex and Jonathan to discuss Star Wars Death Star by Michael Reaves and Steve Perry. All three of us recently read this book, and we thought it would be fun to discuss it. Um, so I don't know if either of you have anything you want to say before we really get into it, but I hadn't heard much about this book, so I had like zero expectations going in. I don't know if either of you were the same way or anything like that.
Well, we have a mutual friend, Nazo, who hyped it up a little bit. But other than that, this is definitely one of the least talked about EU
Hmm.
books in the fandom. I would say mostly because uh, it doesn't go anywhere story-wise. This is the for We never see a lot of these characters again because the EU pretty much ended and these authors stopped writing after this. It's not talked about much, but it should be because it's a great book.
Hmm. You have anything to add, Alex?
I just disagree. No, it's all good. Um,
Of course.
no, I've only read one of Steve Perry's books, and I've never read Michael Reeves' books.
Hmm.
So I
Ooh.
really enjoyed it. Jonathan said he can delineate between the authors. I
Oh yeah.
don't have enough. Yeah, I don't have enough information to go off of. But I read, what is it? A Shadow of the Empire. And so that's
Hmm.
all I had to go off. I never read MedStar. I never read anything. So apparently there was a character from MedStar in here.
Yes, but very minor character and not a big part of this book or that book.
Hmm.
So it's like even if you hadn't read it, it doesn't hurt you not knowing.
Yeah.
I also couldn't tell because I don't think I've read anything by either of them either. So I
Well,
need
I've
to, but I haven't.
I've read most of their books. Of course, for Perry, I've read Shadows of the
Hmm.
Empire, and then for Michael Reeves, I read Shadowhunter, which was great,
Oh
and
yeah,
then I
I did
also
read
read
Shadowhunter. Yeah, never
right,
mind.
and then I also read the MedStar duology, which I thought was mediocre.
Hmm.
And sorry, Nazo. And then I also read um, the Jedi Coruscant Knights trilogy, which I thought was pretty good. So Michael Reeves is a very consistently good author, and Steve Perry, I think, is a good author who just focuses on like stuff that I'm like, do you really have to focus on that, man? Like, if you've read Shadows of the Empire and this book, you know that Steve Perry has some weird sexual stuff he likes to write in his
Yeah.
books.
No, that's good.
So a lot of those scenes, I was, and because Michael Reeves does not put those in his books, so it's pretty obvious who is including that.
Yeah. Well, I can't really think of any examples like that in this book. There's some
Not
romantic
really.
stuff,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it goes into as detail as Shadows of the
No, it doesn't
Empire.
go into as detailed, but certainly he's moving the plot in that direction
Yeah, yeah.
in this
Okay.
book.
All right. Well, uh, by the way, this discussion will be spoiler free. We'll be having a spoiler filled discussion on Jonathan's channel soon, which we're going to be recording after this. But this one will be completely spoiler free. So just general thoughts and opinions, good and bad, on Death Star and all that stuff. Um, so I guess where shall we start? I think we've talked a little bit already about the book, and I think one thing that is notable is that there is a very clear distinction between two parts of the book. Like there is a part one and a part two, and um, I guess we can talk about that a little bit first. Like I really enjoyed part one, but it was a lot of character setup, character introductions. Not a whole lot happens in it. I still enjoyed it. Like once things got rolling, but it definitely is a little bit different from part two, which is where most of the plot happens, and crosses over significantly with certain things from the movies, in very interesting ways. So. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that at all or anything.
I didn't like the first half as much as you did.
Hmm.
It's not bad, but it's so much set up and almost nothing happens in the beginning. I love the characters though. There's one
Yeah.
that I really like, Rachua, who's like a species
Mhm.
that I've never seen before. And I think Jonathan mentioned that it's a species that was introduced in this book,
I think
which
so.
is yeah, which is I love it when authors do that. I know another author, is it Greg Bear, who wrote the what's that? What's
Rogue
that?
Planet.
Rogue
Rogue
Planet.
Planet,
Yeah.
and that ship where it, like everything is like symbiotic, and the life goes through the ship, and one eats the other. And I love when authors introduce that kind of like new species. But the second
Mm.
half of this book is really good. I think people should read this book just for the second half.
Yeah.
I can't, and I think Jonathan mentioned earlier, I hope I'm not stealing what you're going to say later, but you mentioned that it's kind of like from a certain point of view for A New Hope, and that's absolutely true. But you get perspectives, I won't say who, but you get perspectives that you don't even get in the From a Certain Point of View books. So
Hmm.
the second half is really good.
Yeah. And on
Yeah.
top of that, you get a lot of these original characters during the events of A New Hope having a very unique perspective on things, which I really enjoyed.
So I would agree. Yeah, it's definitely that kind of from a certain point of view, especially the second half, which is literally taking place during A New Hope. So the second half of the book is New Hope. The first half's like a couple of years before, and it kind of
Yeah.
leads up to it. And what I would say is the reason the second half works so well is the setup in the first half. The
Hmm.
first half does a really good job with character, and a lot of people say if you have really good character stuff, your plot doesn't really matter as much. And that is true to an extent. And here it is that, this is build up. The plot happens in the second half of the book, but there is still stuff happening. There's stuff with the plans for the Death Star kind of discussed. There's all the people who are getting to the Death Star. There's all of the people who are currently on the Death Star and in charge of it. Like you do see, and this is in the Dramatis Personae, so it's not a spoiler. You do see perspective from Tarkin and Vader in this book.
Hmm.
And so it's not just the little guys. You're getting kind of the macro view from the big heads, and you're getting a micro view. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
And it's
and
not being
so
overdone with the major characters. It's like a couple
no,
of major characters, and then everyone else is like the little guy, so to speak, which
and
is
it could have
something I
been
really liked.
it could have been way more
Hmm.
from Tarkin and Vader's perspective, because from a marketing perspective, if you're marketing this book, if you're just using the original characters in the book, it's really hard to sell it. Yes, you could say it's a book set on the Death Star, but that only what gets you so far. But being able to say, hey, we included Tarkin in the book as the point of view character, that gets
Hmm.
butts and seats.
Yeah. And I think they were very well, like it didn't feel like they were like, I mean, obviously it said on the Death Star, so they needed, I guess, to be there, but it didn't feel like they were put in just for the sake of like fan service or for the sake of like you said, so to speak, getting butts and seats, but it was, because they were relevant to it. So that's something I appreciated about it too. And I liked a lot of the characters too. Like there was a lot of characters. Like it's a pretty big cast of characters, of original characters. I didn't count them, but there's quite a few. And
Hmm.
all of them are done in a way where they all feel distinct from each other. Like even like I'm terrible with the names, so I cannot name the characters particularly, but I remember like, oh, that's the character who's involved in like the gunner stuff. That's the character who
Hmm.
runs the cantina. That's the character who is like kind of not supposed to be there, but he is trying to kind of make his own way and all that stuff. And I felt like they were all very distinctive, and I really like seeing the way that all these very different characters from different backgrounds interacted with each other in this very interesting point in history, in this point in like in terms of location and everything, like themselves discovering what the Death Star is as they are on it, which I thought was also really cool. So, um, trying, and this book also like was very like the action in it is not particularly heavy until towards the end, but I think it was also very well done. The action's really good. Um, is another thing that I liked about it. Is there anything else you guys liked about it that you want to particularly highlight?
Well, I would like to point out before Jonathan does, because I don't want to steal his stuff, that the art is great. The guy who does it is John Harris.
Yeah,
If he also does this, which I never noticed, but it's so obvious because he
that
does
makes a lot of
these,
sense.
yeah, he does the Dark Tide duology, and these books are like, almost like art, like painted art, unlike
Yeah.
any other Star Wars cover that I've had. Sidebar, by the way, this is the book that I dropped and it almost caught on fire. Anyway, but the John Harris, I don't know if he does any other Star Wars books. I can't think of another cover that looks
Not,
as painted
Yeah.
no, I
as
don't think
these
so.
three, but I really enjoy that. And I also enjoyed stealing Jonathan's stuff.
Yes, the cover art is really good. It was a very smart move with this cover to show the Death Star not in its completed form. I liked that a lot. But it does remind me of the cover for Catalyst,
Yeah.
which is trying to even more show the size of the Death Star because Catalyst shows the Star Destroyer as being this teeny tiny speck comparatively, whereas this, because of perspective, the
Mm.
ship's closer to the camera, quote unquote camera, and so because of that, it looks larger, so it doesn't make the Death Star seem as big. That's one thing I'd say Catalyst has a leg up on. But speaking of Catalyst, but one thing both of these do well, this and Catalyst for the canon, is they demonstrate the enormity of the project. They
Mm.
demonstrate how difficult it was to get all the pieces done. And you see it, as I said, macro, micro. The macro is you're seeing Tarkin have to pull in these Star Destroyers, and you're seeing him have to manage all these things. And on the micro sense, you're thinking, we need a pub for all these guys to go drinking afterwards, otherwise
Yeah.
morale is going to be pretty bad.
Mm.
Or we need, this infirmary and we need doctors, and so they pull in this doctor who's not a administrator, but they don't have any administrators, so the doctor becomes an administrator to be in charge of the hospital. And so you realize just the logistical impressiveness of the Death Star. Not to say it wasn't evil, but just the impressiveness of running such a battle station and operating fully, making it fully armed and fully operational is a major feat in this book, and you really see that well.
Yeah. Alex, I don't know if you had anything else to say. I had another point I wanted to bring up, but I don't want to interrupt you if you also had to say something.
No, no, go ahead.
Okay. I was pulling up my Goodreads review real quick because I was blanking on other things, even though I know there are other things. One thing I really like about this as well, kind of similar to how it shows the Death Star as like a project that was being worked on, is also just the power of it and like how much of a force that it is. Like, I don't know if you guys feel the same way or not, but like seeing it in A New Hope and what it does is impactful. But then you go to something like Rogue One, which is able to show that in so much more depth and detail. And I feel like reading about the Death Star in this book felt much more akin to how it's shown in Rogue One, where you get to really see the impact it had. And not only that, but see the impact it has on the people who are working on it. And I think that was really, really well done also.
That's one
There,
of the things that I expected, and I
Yeah.
was very, yeah, that is executed
It
very, very well.
I think it's one of the best things about this book,
I agree.
is how well that's done.
although ironically, there's a long running joke, and I don't know whether it predates this book or was as a result of this book. The person I've always heard tell the joke was Delilah Dawson, who wrote for some of the canon books, and what she would joke about was, yeah, there's all these contractors and guys on the Death Star who called their family and said, "Honey, we can afford the dental plan." Hey, what's that over there? Oh, that's Yavin. And it's
Mm,
and this book does a lot to humanize them, but it doesn't go as far. It never did the hey, I'm a guy who has a kid at home, and you can't blow us up because my poor kid. Like it never went that far in
Yeah.
terms of humanizing the people on the Death Star, but it did make a point of showing it's not all Palpatine and Tarkin and Vader on the Death
Mm.
Star. There are some legitimately good people who are just trying to do their best there.
Yeah. And you get to see the impacts that that has on people. Like, there is the guy who turns out to be the gunner for the Death Star, and you get to see the way that him operating the Death Star has an effect on him. And, different people like learning about, like, oh, what is this thing actually capable of? Has done very well. So,
oh, I
uh,
completely agree with that. So was either Michael Reeves or Steve Perry, were they, do you know either of you if they were involved in like a medical profession or something? Because they wrote the MedStar books, and then I mean, it's not a very significant plot in this book, but there's a character who's a doctor in this book. And I was wondering, like, do they just like writing about that stuff, or does it do either, you know?
I
I
know
have
that they're
no
both
idea.
fans of MASH, which was a TV show about like people who were doing medical work in Vietnam, not Vietnam, Korea.
Korea, yeah.
Yeah, I know that they were fans of MASH. Michael Reaves was a screenwriter for Hollywood. He wrote for the Batman animated series.
Oh, I didn't
So
know that.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
and I think he wrote Matt, or at least co-wrote Mask of the Phantasm. But he was a screenwriter, and Steve Perry has been a novelist for so long. So I don't think either of them were actually in the medical profession, but they're certainly fans of it.
Hmm.
Mm.
All right. Well, as far as like anything, I don't know if either of you have any kind of downsides with the book or not. The only thing literally I could think of that I didn't enjoy about it was just the slow start. But
Hmm.
I like you said earlier, Jonathan, I think it was necessary. Like getting the slow start, getting to know the characters makes everything later on so much hit so much harder. So I don't think it really could have been done any other way. So it's like it's one of those things where it was an issue for me reading it, but looking back, it kind of isn't. So I don't know that I don't know if you guys have any more kind of criticism type things to discuss or not, but that's literally the only thing I did not enjoy about this book, I think.
Mm. No, I didn't have any criticism. I mean, more so than what I said earlier, which is the first half just didn't.
Hmm.
I agree with Jonathan that the whole setup, the second half has a really good payoff for the first half. And without the first half, you wouldn't have that awesome payoff.
Yeah.
It's just I wasn't as interested in the first half. I was just going, ah. Um, there is something that I found out that I'm surprised that at least one of you didn't bring up, which
Oh.
was there is like a little, just a kind of a fun fact that is really interesting that I actually found out in this. It's a really cool thing, by the way.
Ooh.
Um, Mahdi, the guy
Hmm.
who gets choked
Oh,
by
about the
Darth
first
Vader,
name?
the first name, okay, I guess Jonathan knows, but
I have no
it's
idea what you're talking
so
about.
so his name, Caleb, his full name, Mahdi's name is Conan Antonio Mahdi. And he's named that because George Lucas was on Conan O'Brien's night show and said, "I'll name a Star Wars character after you."
Oh my
And that's
goodness.
the one. And I don't know if Conan was insulted by
Well,
that or not,
I
because
don't.
he's a
Well,
horrible person. But not Conan, but Modi. But
George Lucas. No.
yeah, George Lucas. Yeah,
Well, here's what makes that even funnier is they had in the book chosen a different name for Madi, and
that's right.
so they had the name Z, which apparently was in chapter 38 of the book. I had missed it, but is in chapter
Yeah.
38. But they had that other name, and they had written it with the new name in mind. And George Lucas went on the Conan show while this book was in production. And so they had to rush to change it. And it's like, come on, George. Of course, it's your franchise, so you do what you want. But it's
That's
like,
true.
come on,
That's
George.
amazing.
Yeah.
See, you brought up his first name. I was like, Admiral?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I thought we could take a second and maybe give like ratings
Yeah,
if
yeah.
we have them.
So I had to give this like a 9.5 out of 10. Like
Woo!
I
You
really
loved it
liked
more
it.
than we
I
did.
really liked it. Like and like I said, the only thing that I wasn't a fan of was the very beginning, and that was mostly just because so many characters are getting thrown at you and it's hard to keep track of them all for me. But once I got kind of into the book, I was like all into it. Like by I don't know, 50 or 100 pages in, I was totally into it. And I loved it all the way through. So,
I would probably say eight. Being if I had to rate it, which I don't know. I usually don't do that, but the first half is five. The second half is like almost 10.
yeah,
So I'll have to round that up to eight. Um, it's definitely, I would say, like on all the EU books that I've read, it's probably above the median.
yeah,
Because the writing quality is great, the characters are great, and the story by the time you finish it, you're like, wow, that was really good. So yeah, it's a book I would absolutely recommend, and it's one that at least I enjoyed without knowing any of the backstory for any of the characters, not having read the other books by the authors and stuff. So I think anyone can pick this up and read it. So I would recommend it. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
I would give it an 8 as well. For the same similar things, I think the second half is generally stronger. Although when you asked about criticisms, I have a criticism about like the final chapter, but that's a spoiler, so we won't get into that
Ooh,
here.
oh
But
boy.
despite that criticism, I would agree the second half's better than the first, even though the first half sets up the second half better.
Mhm.
You were talking about it being, despite me putting it at an 8, I still think it's below the median of Star Wars books
Really?
Oh my
because
gosh.
I just think there's that many books that are better than
Mm,
there are worse. But it's still a great book.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
I would personally put this as one of the most underrated Star Wars books because I never hear it talked about,
yeah.
and I really loved it. I think even like, even if I were to have given it, I think a slightly lower score, like a 8 or a 9 or something, I think I would still probably feel that way because it really, it really had a big impact. I think, especially seeing like all the impact of what the Death Star is and how it affected the people and everything. It really worked for me. So, and I love the characters and all that stuff. I think was very well done. So,
And if you want to hear more detail on some of this, we have the spoiler video coming very
yes,
soon, probably in the next week after this releases.
yes. All right. So, I don't know if either of you guys have any other closing things you want to say, or if you just want to wrap it up, or
Well, thank you for having me, Caleb. And I have nothing to plug, but support your local bookstores and your public libraries. That's all I ask. But
there you
thank you,
go.
Caleb.
Yeah, thank you too for doing this.
Yep.
It's been a good
Absolutely.
talk.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's pretty much it for this one. So, thank you all for watching. I will see you all next time.